All right, good morning. I can't tell if anybody's on just because I know we're streaming to YouTube. So I want to take a moment and just give you a quick rundown of what you can expect with Value Squared, right? Just going off the tagline here, this is some phenomenal content that's come straight from KWRI in light of everything that's gone on in the last 6 months in real estate. But the value you give determines the value you get, right? And what I know to be true is all of us are running a very big and important business for our clients, right? Number one, we want to be able to make a living, create a life by design. And then number two, we want to help people. We want to take care of people and how we run our business, because that's exactly what we're doing. Running a business impacts the perceived value or the real value we provide, right? Just a reminder on TCPA, make sure that you guys are making sure you're not calling anybody on the do not call, that you're following these guidelines. It's very important. All right, so I'll read this real quick. Value is at the heart of all businesses because all businesses are an exchange of value. You determine the value that you provide, and your clients determine how valuable it is to them. This is how every business works, right? The goal of this material is to help you understand how important value is and how you can build your business around it. Okay, so this is the law of value squared. It says that the value you give determines the value you get. And leading with value as a realtor is very important because there's a lot of work you're doing before you even get to the closing table, right? And so you've got to demonstrate at every really at every turn from the second you make a call or get a call to even the closing and then beyond the closing, how you're going to serve that client and their family, right? And so the challenge for a business is that they must explain and demonstrate the value they will give so well that people agree to their price before they actually get to experience it. And this can happen in three specific ways, right? Number one, we're establishing trust. Number two, you are providing a fiduciary representation. And I want to pause real quick here because the fiduciaries that exist in our world are realtors, doctors, lawyers, and your financial institutions, right? So being a fiduciary is a big deal. And fiduciaries get paid a premium because they provide that service. You're not a functionary, you're a fiduciary, right? And number three, you're going to deliver core services with a positive and memorable client experience that will surprise and delight. So this is the value model. Number one, we're establishing and building trust. It's like a sandwich, right? Number one, we're going to demonstrate knowledge, skills, and experience. Number two, we're providing, this is the bottom piece of the sandwich, fiduciary representation. And then the middle of that sandwich is 3, 4, 5. Number three, you're providing core services. That's what you do. Number four, you're delivering that client experience. That's how you do it. And then number five is surprise and delight. That's like extras on top of what people get to experience that is, I would say, unique compared to what other realtors might offer. Right. Okay. Number one, establishing trust. Here's how we do that. We have a circle of trust, and it starts with empathy, goes around the circle, goes to competency, through transparency, up to dependability, and back to empathy, right? And you start in empathy because there's a place of understanding and care, and you have to show up authentically to really get that level of trust with a client. And then you deepen that trust, right? They understand that you care, that you have understanding of their situation, and that you're authentic. But then you deepen that trust by being competent, by having the knowledge, the skills, and the experience. Don't be that realtor or that agent who lacks knowledge, skills, or experience, right? And what I'm going to tell you is I think it's really important that you know your data, you know your market, you know your research. Having the knowledge allows you to have conversations with conviction, right? And it allows you to deepen and demonstrate your skills. And so, what I can promise you is if you show up and you promise a thing and then you deliver it, well, there you go. Like you're showing that level of competency. And then from empathy to competency to transparency, this is how we lead. Right? We lead with transparency. We're open, honest, clear, and we communicate, communicate, communicate. That's how you build trust with anybody, whether it's a friend, family member, or a client. Being open, honest, and transparent and continually communicating consistently is the key to that piece, right? And then that flexes into dependability. That's where promises are kept. Your expectations around the conversations and the process are met. And then you again maintain that fiduciary responsibility of confidentiality, and that's maintained, right? And that's the circle of trust. And so you build and keep trust up front and then over time, right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to let you read through what these are because we've got a bunch of slides to get through here. But understand that you can build trust up front and continue to build trust over time, but you can also lose it, right? And so demonstrating empathy, proving competency, establishing transparency, and assuring dependability up front is a game changer for you and your business. And then over time, you're going to continue to show empathy. You're going to continue to deliver competency. You're going to provide that transparency throughout the transaction and then beyond it. And then that will ensure that dependability, right? Building and keeping trust is vital in every real estate relationship and real estate transaction. And so this is how trust is built or lost in regards to sellers on this side and buyers on this side, right? And these are pretty straightforward. These are pretty easy to understand, but take a snapshot of this, write down in your notes, take a mental picture, and understand that this is how you're going to build or lose trust, right? And this is where it happens. So, quick summary, right? Before any core services frameworks can be created and executed, trust first must need to be established. Number two, we're going to build and sustain trust over time. Number three, we're going to use the 8 moments. These are the 8 moments where trust is built or lost with sellers and buyers as a template for building a real estate practice. And then for each of those moments, you're going to define how you will demonstrate each component of that circle of trust. This one, right? And then you're going to set your plan into action. All right, all this is great. We can have a framework, we can have a plan. Then you have to put it into action. You have to do the work. All right, number two, that fiduciary responsibility and that representation. And again, it's that bottom piece of the sandwich there. And this is key, right? This is how you're going to understand and level up as a business owner, going from a functionary to a fiduciary. So I'm going to read real quick what a functionary is. And then I'm going to read real quick what a fiduciary is. And you tell me, or you make a mental note of which kind of person you would want representing you on a transaction, right? A functionary has a shallow relationship. They assume the least amount of responsibility. They report data and information. They react to requests. They're reactive. They focus on tasks. They tell and sell. They are somebody who's replaceable, and they're minimally paid, right? They're a door opener. They're a functionary. A fiduciary, on the other hand, has a deep relationship, right? You accept the most responsibility. You interpret and advise on the data information. Just don't report it. You're going to interpret and advise, being competent, knowing your market, knowing your data. You're going to anticipate needs, being focused on outcomes over tasks, right? The tasks are part of it, but you're going to be focused on the outcome. You're going to educate and guide rather than tell and sell. That's a key difference. The client experience will be wildly different if you educate and guide versus tell and sell. Number 7, a fiduciary is irreplaceable. And more importantly, number 8, you're highly paid. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you are an agent in this office, on average, you are going to make, based on the average commission and the time allotted that you focus on the average client and transaction, you're making on the lower end around $375 an hour. You're highly paid. You're a fiduciary. Keep that in mind. You're running a business. So, summary around this. Number 1, being a fiduciary to customers has remained a constant and unchanged factor in the real estate industry. We know it. You know it. Your clients know it. It is all about the relationship. Being a fiduciary and being in relationship and having a high level of competency, empathy, dependability, transparency leads to a trusting relationship where you're attached to the outcomes right? And not just checking off boxes and collecting a check. Number two, a fiduciary not only does the task of the jobs, but is also in a high trust relationship with their client. They feel responsible for that outcome. They put their client's interest above their own, and they treat all client information as confidential. That's huge, right? That's a big piece. Number three, a fiduciary builds deep relationships with their clients because they take an active role in interpreting and advising on data and information for them. Here's a good thought. We're not just swimming on the surface of the water, right? We're not on the, the shallow end of the pool. We want to scuba dive with our clients, right? We want to go into the deep end and have a good relationship, right? We're not surfing, we're scuba diving with our clients, right? All right, number three, here's what's true about sellers. Mental note, snapshot, screenshot, whatever you need to do. This is what all sellers want. They want to net the most amount of money with the fewest amount of hassles in the least amount of time, right? Repeat that with me. Sellers want to net the most amount of money with the fewest amount of hassles in the least amount of time. There's not a seller on the planet that doesn't want to do that. Now, you might have a lot of listers in your sphere who aren't interested in doing that and won't agree to a certain price point that you've researched and put a lot of time and effort in. But if you've got a seller, this is what they want to do. And here's core services that you check off and you provide for a seller, right? Number one, we're consulting to a decision. We'll go deeper into that in just a moment. Number two, marketing the property. Number three, negotiating the contract. Number four, closing the sale. And this is a great quote from one of our agents in the national market, Nikki Miller. The most powerful words in real estate are, here's what happens next. If you don't know what happens next, your clients are going to be so lost. So understand how it all works, the timelines and everything, and you will be great. So stage one, we're consulting to a decision, right? I'm going to move this little box that has my face in it, and we're going to focus on this, right? This is a quick checklist, right? If you aren't doing these things, consulting into a decision, you need to. Number one, do the needs analysis. Ask questions and talk less, right? Let them talk. They will tell you everything they need and want, what their hopes and dreams are, what their dynamics are, what their timeline is, what they can afford, what they'd like to do. Listen, 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 and talk less, right? And then do a home walkthrough. Number two, share who you are. Once they're done talking about themselves, their family, their situation, that house, and where they want to go, share who you are. Number three, explain the process, what you do, how you do it, why that's valuable to them, how you get compensated, right? We're going to be upfront and transparent about that. Whether or not to offer cooperative compensation, pros and cons of leveraging the MLS. And then number four, we're going to go through the home valuation process. This is where you show up with your competency, your knowledge, skills, and research, right? You're going to explain the market and the home's value range. I'll add another piece to this is if you provide a range, do a seller's net sheet on the low end, on the middle, and then on the high part of that range. Number two, explain how long it might take to sell and close. Know your days on market and know your days on market with that neighborhood, with that zip code, and understand that real estate is a lot of times hyper local, right? What homes are worth and valued at in 40509 are going to be different than what they are in 40503, right? Know that. Then number three, explain what things might have to be done to get the desired price range. Some sellers, and not all of them want to hear it, that they need to do some work. It might be some touch up. It might be cosmetic. It might be substantial, right? You have to consult your client on that. You are the expert. Number five, calculate and show seller net sheet. This is so key in setting expectations. You need to know if they've got a mortgage, if there's a payoff, right, to buy their next piece, right? Some homes, they've got a lot of equity and they've paid it off. I want to say north of 70% of all homeowners in America have 50% or more equity in their home. But calculate and show a seller net sheet so that they're prepared that if there's a price reduction, they know ultimately on the low end, middle, and high range what they'll net. Number six, you get them to a point where they decide to sell or not. Sometimes they're not ready. Sometimes it's a not right now. Sometimes it's like we should have had this on the market 2 weeks ago, right? And then you list it. And then number seven, review and sign the listing agreement along with the seller's disclosure, right? And here's just a pro tip. You don't fill out the seller's disclosure. Your client does that. You inspect it and you go over it with them. Number two, we're going to market the property. Number one, right? Get the property ready to market. Do any necessary repairs or improvements. You're going to declutter, and if it needs it, stage it. Number two, we're going to create the marketing plan and assets. We're going to do photos, videos, potentially a floor plan. What's great about Command is you can create every listing. You can create its own website. That should be a value prop that you provide that's in your listing presentation and something you communicate to every seller. You can create a separate website that is fully functional, that has everything you need on it to connect to any potential buyers, and you can create that website through Command. Number five, flyers and postcards. Number six, any kind of social assets. And then, of course, a listing binder that has all of this information for your clients so that they can keep in line with the timeline. And then number three, you're going to run the marketing plan, right? You can promote coming soon to your database and real estate agent list. You can do even an office exclusive, right? Then you're going to market it to the MLS. We're going to do what we need to attract showings. And then you're going to try to create a multi-offer or single offer situation. You want an offer. You're marketing it to bring a offer, to bring a buyer, right? Stage three, we're going to negotiate the contract. And I'm going to blaze through this a little quick. If you have questions, please reach out to me. We're going to present offers, right? Then we're going to create seller net sheets in real time based off of real offers, right? Not the scenario when we first sat down with them. And then number two, we're going to review qualifications of buyers. That's important. Number three, we're going to identify pros and cons of the offer or offers, right? Even if you get one offer in, you still need to present it and go over this. Number two, you're going to negotiate that contract. We're going to talk price, terms, personal property, conditions or repairs, buyer agent compensation if applicable, right? What we're seeing is buyer agent compensation is definitely applicable, right? Every listing agent at some point is a buyer's agent. I always encourage listing agents to have that conversation with their sellers around offering that, right? Now, the seller gets to decide, but you need to have that conversation at a high level. And then number three, we're navigating due diligence. This is very important, right? This is not where we sit on our laurels and twiddle our thumbs. You have a job during due diligence, right? Open escrow and title. We're going to review inspection and possible repair requests. And then we're going to meet those milestones on a contingency calendar, right? According to what contract is written and what's in place. And then stage four, we're closing the sale. Number one, coordinating with a title and attorney and all parties to the contract on the closing date. We're going to review closing packet with seller, including seller's closing statement, prep seller to move. We're going to pack, move, clean, shut off utilities, confirm all closing conditions, including everything that conveys or any kind of repairs. We're going to close, verify funding, and get those keys exchanged, right? Pretty straightforward. And so this is the seller client experience, how you do it. The seller client experience is the impression formed through every interaction from getting the listing agreement to closing the sale, right? I like to use the metaphor of walking up the steps with your client, right? And if you do things, depending on how things go, if you don't perform well or deliver high trust or high competency and you don't lead with transparency, it's easy to fall down the stairs with your clients, right? And so it's important that you keep going up those steps, right? And so we're getting from the listing agreement to closing the sale. The client experience is made up of three ingredients around their selling journeys: what happened on it, what they think about it, and then actually what they feel about it, right? And we've all heard this before. Some people don't always remember, right, what you've done, but they remember how they feel about you or how you made them feel, right? So as you design the seller client experience, think about those three things and the ways they experience you during those moments: how you appear, how you act, how you communicate and interact. And those three things are all within your control. Keep that in mind. And this is surprise and delight. These are some of the extra things you can do. So agents that deliver the best experience build surprise and delight into those experience. If you get the job done without being remarkable, there's nothing to remark about. So surprise and delight delivers the 3 R's, right? Reviews, ratings, and referrals, which I think all of us want. And this is a sample of what a seller menu of services could look like. You could bundle it or unbundle it. I want you to take a look at this, screenshot it, whatever. I'm not going to dive deep into this, but this is something that can set you apart. Okay. This is a good look about what bundling looks like, right? Bundling for single price value is taking your core services, client experience, surprise and delights, charging one price or percentage for it. And then unbundling is where you do things a la carte. I charge X if you bring a buyer. I charge X if I bring the buyer. I charge X for this bundle of services, things like that. All right, cooperative compensation. So we're just going to hit this head on, right? I'm going to take what KWRI is giving us and I'm just going to read it verbatim. The premise of cooperative compensation is an agreement between a listing broker and seller to incentivize cooperating brokers to write offers and reward an accepted offer on a property. If offered, cooperative compensation will be paid by either the listing broker or the seller. Cooperative compensation is not required by law or practice or by KWRI. Cooperative compensation must be openly discussed with the seller and approved in writing before it is offered. If authorized, the amount of the offer is fully negotiable, and it always has been. All right, 13 reasons, and we're going to blaze through this really quick. The seller wants a buyer represented by a professional real estate. This is value of a buyer's agent, right? Number one, seller and listing agent will work with a buyer's agent who has been fingerprinted and underground background checks. Every agent in your KREC board or in the state of Kentucky has been fingerprinted and has an FBI background check. Number two, the buyer's agent will serve as an intermediary, which gives the seller the best chance of reaching agreement and closing. A buyer's agent can work with the listing agent to problem solve and help bridge differences between clients that could otherwise derail a positive transaction for the seller and buyer. Number three, the buyer's agent will work to safeguard the seller's home during showings. That's important. Number four, the buyer's agent will work to ensure that the buyer is qualified to purchase the home. We've been there before where the buyers have gone under contract and then financing has fell through because they ultimately weren't qualified. Number five, the buyer's agent will work to ensure that the buyer has the cash available for down payment and closing costs. Number six, the buyer's agent can provide feedback. This is important, especially in the market right now around pricing and getting pricing right, to the seller regarding price and condition that will help them sell their home. Number seven, where available, the buyer's agent will use promulgated forms that protect all parties. We have a board that certified our forms. Lawyers looked over it. Our forms are great. Bluegrass Realtors has done a great job. Number eight, the seller and listing agent will work with the buyer's agent who has agreed to a code of ethics. Number nine, the buyer's agent is highly likely to be properly insured, which protects all parties. That's true. You can't be an agent in Kentucky without E&O. Number 10, the buyer's agent will advise the buyer to write an offer that reflects current market conditions. Number 11, the buyer's agent will provide a list of best professional vendors to choose from to keep the transaction as smooth as possible. Have a robust vendor list of reputable people and multiple people in certain categories, right? 3 lenders, 3 home inspectors, all of it, right? Number 12, the buyer's agent will guide the buyer through all the steps from inspection to closing. That's huge. Otherwise, you get to do that as a listing agent. Number 13, the buyer's agent will work tirelessly to ensure that the buyer maintains their credit worthiness until they arrive for the closing and the transaction is funding. All right, supply and demand. Let's have a quick conversation. This is a challenge for every individual seller. And it's that they can't directly impact supply and can only influence demand. So other than price, there are 5 things that can be done to influence demand. Number 1, we're ensuring that the property is in working condition by making repairs. It's a big one. Not every seller wants to do that. Your job as an expert is to convince them when that is needed and providing solutions and strategies to make it happen. Number two, make strategic improvements such as updates, enhanced aesthetics, better curb appeal, etc. If you've been in the real estate game longer than 3 months, you know how important that is. Number three, present the home in a way that appeals to the most amount of buyers through staging, photos, and property description. Pretty straightforward. Number four, we're leveraging the MLS. We're going to list it on Flex, right? And it's going to go to all these agents and all these prospective buyers. Number five, consider offering cooperative compensation. That is going to get you more qualified buyers and a professional on the other side of the table to deal with. All right, and this is cooperative compensation options. There are three fundamental choices for sellers. They approve it, right? They authorize it. Number two, they don't authorize it, but they're willing to consider it. And then number three, they don't authorize it and they don't consider it. This does happen. It's unfortunate, but I do think the best listing agents out there ultimately secure cooperative compensation. So in discussing the seller's choices, you should not suggest that cooperative compensation must be offered. Agents must disclose and state in conspicuous language, right, in their listing agreements that broker commissions and offers of cooperative compensation are not set by law or practice and are fully negotiable. In addition, you must obtain written approval from your seller to offer cooperative compensation. Written approval to offer cooperative compensation. Make a mental note. If your seller decides against making an offer of cooperative compensation, it is recommended that you document your seller's decision. Consult your local market center and best practices. Right. And this is just a conversation authorized to offer it. And this is what a conversation can sound like. I want to generate the widest pool of buyers that brings me the best price and terms with the least amount of hassle. I accept the potential risk that I could be offering more compensation than the buyer has agreed to pay the buyer's agent because I want to attract the largest pool of buyers. It's estimated as much as 40% of the market would be challenged to pay the buyer's agent out of pocket. Significant, might be higher, probably higher here. Many first-time buyers and move-up buyers would be challenged, and anyone using a VA loan would currently be denied that option. Number two, we're not authorizing it, but willing to consider it an offer. I'm willing to keep my options open to paying it or not. I accept the potential risk of exposing my property to a smaller pool of buyers because some buyers who need it may not ask if it's available and may assume it's not. Additionally, I accept the potential risk if a buyer doesn't have representation of encountering more hassles and more delays. Number three, we're not authorizing it and not considering it. This is what a seller will say. I'm unwilling to pay it. I accept the potential risk of exposing my property to a smaller pool of buyers because a buyer who needs it may not make an offer. Additionally, I accept the potential risk if a buyer doesn't have representation of encountering more hassles and more delays. So summary on sellers. Number one, determining the framework of your seller core services and then the strategies it will take to execute them. It's important to have them, equally important to execute them. Number two, after your framework and strategies are determined, we're going to add some extras, some surprise and delight that will garner us more reviews, better ratings, and more referrals. A listing to agents' core services are embedded with client experience and surprise and delight moments, and they aid an agent in deciding how they want to be compensated. And number four, we're showing up as a fiduciary at every stage during the seller core service. Buyers, right? Quick refresher on the value model. Here's what's true about buyers. Make a mental note, take a screenshot, write this down. Buyers want they want to find the right property that meets their timing needs and get it at the best price with the fewest amount of hassles. Buyers want to find the right property that meets their timing needs and get it at the best price with the fewest amount of hassles. This is true for every buyer. So a buyer agency agreement, the one that's mandated now by by NAR and DOJ. Buyer agency is a relatively new idea as it was established in the early 90s, but it's what we've known really for the last 30 years, right? The Real Estate Buyers Agency Council was founded in 1988 to advocate for buyers' representation. And in concert with the FTC, agency disclosures and buyer's agency came into being and are now widely used. So, what's a buyer agency agreement? Officially, it is a written contract between the buyer and agent outlining the details of their working relationship. When should it be signed? This is very clear, according to the lawsuit. It must be signed before the agent can show a property. Consult Bo and our team of brokers for best practices. So this is what essentials conversations when explaining your buyer agency agreement, right? And we're going to hit this pretty well because we've hammered it over the last few months. Explain what you charge and what you do to earn it, right? Make sure you disclose in conspicuous language that stands out and is clearly visible, and that the buyer acknowledges that there are no standard compensation rates or programs, and that the terms in the buyer agency agreement are fully negotiable and are not established or set by law. Then number two, we're making sure you cover whether this is an exclusive or non-exclusive agency relationship. And then we're going to explain how you get paid for your core services. Number one, the buyer can pay you directly at closing. Number two, the seller or seller's broker can pay you at closing. Number three, explain the opportunities and challenges of cooperative compensation. Number four, explain the opportunities of seller concessions. Number five, if the seller or listing broker is paying you via cooperative compensation, never say or imply, absolutely never say or imply this, that your services are free. They are not. The only exception to saying that your services are free is if you are actually not receiving any compensation for the transaction. So, essential conversations when explaining your buyer agency agreement. When explaining the possibilities of sellers offering compensation, you will have to deal with three possibilities. Equal. If it's equal, then there's nothing to negotiate or discuss with the buyer. Less. If it's less, then the buyer makes up the difference, or the seller will agree to make up the difference. And if it's more, the excess cannot be paid to the buyer's agent. The excess can either be credited back to the seller or negotiated to be credited to the buyer, but not to the agent. Buyer core services. This is what you do as a buyer's agent. Number one, similar to number one of the seller, we're consulting to a decision. Number two, searching for properties. Number three, finding the house. Number four, negotiating. And number five, closing the sale. This is what a consulting to a decision with a buyer looks like. Number one, have a strategy session. Meet, have a good conversation, identify their motivation, do the needs analysis, listen, listen, listen. Stop talking, ask great questions, get exactly what they need, want, and all the details around it. Then after they've talked and you know everything you need to know, explain your process, what you do, how you do it, and the value that they get. Number two, what you charge, how you get paid, including cooperative compensation. Then we're going to explain the home buying process. Educate your client on the market and set expectations. In your first conversation, set expectations. We're going to pre-qualify the buyer at number four. We're going to help them make the decision to buy or not. Sometimes it's not right now. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's we're ready to go. Number six, we're going to review and sign the buyer agency agreement. And then number seven, we're going to arrange financing. We're going to find a mortgage lender, secure terms, get pre-approval with estimated payment and net sheet. Number two, search for properties. Here's what a passive agent does. They wait for the buyer to call and request a showing. Don't be the passive agent. Here's what an active agent does. Number one, they search for on-market MLS houses. Number two, they search for on-market houses not on the MLS. And then number three, this is a big one that doesn't get done. Prospect for off-market houses homeowners might be willing to sell. Make TCPA compliant calls, door knock, send direct mail, use social media, Search any wood sales in your database. Number 3, you're going to find the house. Confirm that listed properties are still available. Run a CMA to offer pricing strategy, right? We want to be able to have a good, healthy conversation based on your skills and market research on what to offer, right? Maybe it is list price, maybe it's above, maybe it's under. Review all disclosures and documents and verify information, and then prepare to write an offer or set the next appointment. We're going to negotiate the contract. Number 1, we're gathering data. Contacting listing agent for details and status, build rapport, refresh your CMA, review any disclosures or documents that have now become available. Number 2, we're writing the offer, price, terms, personal property, any condition or repairs, buyer agent commission, if applicable. Number 3, delivering the offer. 4, negotiate the offer. Number 5, navigate due diligence, where you open escrow and title, notify lender, conduct property inspection within the due diligence period, negotiate repairs, meet milestones or contingency calendar, or work with the listing agent to resolve any disputes between clients. And then we're closing the sale, right? Coordinating appraisal and clear mortgage conditions, coordinate with title and attorney and all parties to the contract on the closing date, provide utilities information, review closing package with buyer, including buyer's closing statement. Please go over that. Not enough agents go over the closing disclosure, and it can become a problem at closing. Number 5, conduct final walkthrough to verify condition and repairs. And then number 6, close, verify funding, and conduct the key exchange. Right? Same thing on the buyer side. As you design your buyer client experience, these 3 things matter. How you appear, how you act, how you communicate and interact. And those are all within your control. Buyers, surprise and delight. These are the extra things you can do for more reviews, better ratings, and more referrals, right? Determine your framework. This is the summary of your buyer core services and the strategies it will take to execute them. After you have your framework and strategies, those are determined, we're going to add surprise and delight. Number 3, we're going to go over buyer agent core services that are embedded with that client experience. And then number 4, we're showing up as that fiduciary during every bit of that transaction. All right, number 5, becoming irreplaceable. Remember, value is at the heart of all businesses because all businesses are an exchange of value. You determine the value that you provide, and your clients determine how valuable it is to them. As you move past the transaction, focus on deepening the relationship. Think of it this way: products, services, and touch programs need to be either useful or needed. If something is useful or needed, it's relevant. And if it's relevant, it's valuable. When you are consistently delivering relevance and value, you are on the path to becoming irreplaceable. Becoming irreplaceable is what creating clients for life, this is what we all want to do, is all about. This is the driving mission of any touch program. Relevance and value. Make a list of all the touches you make. Circle the ones that are useful or needed. Review and audit that list that are not useful or needed. List what you could then do instead to make it useful. Then you're going to ask these questions. Does it differentiate my business? Can I use it to get reviews, ratings, or referrals? And then number 4, lastly, we're committed to trading out a useless touch for a useful one each quarter or month. Right? So this is the summary, value squared in a nutshell, these 6 things. Number 1, value can change over time. You need to be nimble, flexible. You got to embrace change and use it as an opportunity to adapt when faced with it. Number 2, we're understanding your value and being able to communicate it at a high level is essential for building trust through empathy, competency, transparency, independently, and then you're going to do that over and over. Number 3, when you focus on value, it's conveyed throughout the entire transaction, including before and after. Moving past the transaction, value must continue by deepening the relationship. Scuba dive, don't surf. Number 4, when you deliver relevance and value, you are on the path to becoming irreplaceable. Number 5, implement your core service frameworks for both your buyers and sellers. And then number 6, right, we're completing any of the post-training extensions to hone your value and customer experience further. All right. There's a QR code to do a KWU evaluation. Your region, event, course name, my name. Scan that QR code, and you can give feedback to KWR around this training and the content and the information and myself. Make sure that you do this. This helps us get better. KW Cares, it is our national nonprofit. Please consider giving to KW Cares at closings. We've got a next generation, and I believe that is it. All right, folks, that is the rundown in 50 minutes. Thank you for being on the call. I appreciate everyone, and have a great